All right, guys, so let's get into some news that we have today. So we had an opportunity to speak with the Small Business Committee this afternoon, and the purpose of that was to see where the bill is and if they had any questions pertaining to some of the language. So the bill is still being drafted. It's not finished yet, and they did have some questions on the language. But before we get there, it's going to be important to remember a few things. We're not the only ones in these discussions. Meaning, when I say us, I mean the United States Fitness Coalition. Now, I've been saying for a long time that we do represent the smaller gyms, the boutique industry, and we do. The other coalitions that are out there, particularly here in New York and a bunch of others, do not. Their interests obviously lie with their membership base and who they represent. So there is a give and take here. There's also on my part, a lot of pushback onto certain things that I think should be in the small business grant. So a lot of things right now in the Senate are just all tied up, in Congress in general. Nothing is getting to the floor. The reconciliation bill is being, lowered. Things are coming out of it. So there's uncertainty all over the place. Nobody knows how much funding is even going to be allowed into the Small Business Committee. It might be less than what they had originally thought. If that's the case, then things would get lowered. However, they want to have this bill ready and done. So when all these things are decided, that our bill is ready to be introduced. Now, I'm also going to preface this by saying I doubt very strongly that we are going to see any kind of relief coming for the rest of this year. If something is to come, it probably isn't going to be until 2022. Now, things can happen relatively quickly from what I'm told once the ball starts rolling, but right now, our government is kind of in a state of flux, and for lack of a better word, it's just a simple mess. So let's get back to some of the things that we need to address inside this bill. One is the definition of fitness, which I did share with everybody in a newsletter, which I think is fine with everyone. It's, physical activity. It is a brick and mortar place, so the definition I think for that is fine. But some of the things that need to be omitted would be, let's say, a tennis facility, a soccer facility, a training facility that was primarily for that. Think of people who are just training for that in particular sport. These places tend to be camps, or they tend to be very big, whereas this is for small businesses. It is also important to remember that the Gyms Act itself, you can go back in video and you can go back in emails. I was never a proponent of it. I didn't think, I wasn't in favor of that bill. I didn't think it favored the small gym, and I was right. But it was never meant to pass. It was always meant to, I guess, from things that I've heard, to get us to this point. But in doing so, it's basically had to be rewritten. So everything that the Gyms Act is gone, and now we're here. But it was mimicked after the restaurants and Broadway. So what's important to remember there is that money that was given out, 10% of restaurants received over 40% of the funding. So think about that. 10% of all restaurants received more than 40% of all funding. That's because that bill was geared towards those larger chains, those larger groups. We cannot have that here, okay? We are past the point of making people whole. It's never gonna happen. It's just not. It's too little too late. We needed something back when this first happened, which we were trying to get done, which we were trying to ask bigger gyms and everybody else to be involved. Nobody did. And when everybody got involved later, it was already too late. It was already too late. So any funding that we wanted to be made whole, that's long gone. So that's not going to happen. Really what we're fighting for here is to make sure that the small boutique fitness industry gets something, okay? Instead of just sitting here getting nothing while the bigger gyms or the bigger corporations just keep on getting more and more and more. So, we can't have those type of facilities in here. Another thing was franchises are going to obviously, be allowed to apply. Think of F45 and Orange Theory. They are boutique and they are fitness. However, larger gyms and larger owners who own many F45s or Orange Theories or Lifetimes or Equinoxes or whatever it may be, okay, there has to be a cap on that. In the restaurant bill, it was 20. So as long as you owned 20 of them, all 20 could receive money. If you owned 21 or 22, you received none. The larger gyms realize that 20 just can't happen, but they're looking between 10 to 15. That number is too high. This money has to go to the small gym owner who got nothing. For the gym owner who owns 800 square foot studio, owns one of them. For the gym owner who owns a 2,000, 1,500, or 5,000 square foot studio. So there has to be a limit on what that is. And that limit is going to be somewhere between 5 to 7. Again, it's going to be important to remember, we can't make everybody whole. So we have to have some sort of limits here to make sure that most can get. So there'll be cap limits on what you can get. There'll be how many gyms you own and what can get. And if you own over that amount, you will not receive any. So these things are going to come into play, and hard decisions are going to have to be made, and some people are going to be left out. But the hope is that the ones who are left in are the ones that received nothing. Okay? And that's in the thousands, guys. That's in the thousands. There will be stipulations in there where you'll have to show at least a 25% loss. There'll be all sorts of different things in there that will try to kind of, I guess, weed through certain groups or certain people who own. But, we are underfunded, outmanned when it comes to these issues. We are doing the best we can, hence why we go to DC and we make these connections and we actually go and see people face to face, which we are the only group who does. Most of these are done via email, phone calls, or Zoom, but we're actually going down there, making these connections and seeing people. And that does go a long way, and it keeps us in the loop of what's going on. So again, it is important that to know that the funding that gyms may get isn't going to be enough that's going to make everybody whole. That's long gone. So it has to be how many can we help and who can get it and how we decipher that. And it's going to leave out some people. It just is, right? Our hope is that it does leave out the larger chained gyms because chances are they received a lot of PPP. They may have funding from investors, or they are easily able to get investors where a smaller boutique studio is not. So, when I say to you that we're really the only ones out there fighting for the small boutique fitness industry, I'm really not kidding. We're lobbying, to make sure that you're taken care of and you can get money. We're down in DC doing it. There really is kind of no one else doing that. So, these are some of the things that we're up against when it comes to this bill. The other thing right now is we don't know where this bill is going to go. We don't know yet the vehicle that it'll be attached to, because everything's up in the air for that. If you remember correctly, we were trying to get members of the Senate on board. Now, according to the Small Business Committee, there are 2 Republican senators and there are 3 House senators. You're going to need all of them. We're going to need every one. We're going to need a majority, and we don't have it. And that's just a simple way that this is. So we need more, and we never got it. We spent a lot of time on the House when really, it probably should have been spent inside the Senate. And we don't have a lot of representation there for this bill. And right now, everybody is wrapped up into reconciliation, and then they'll be wrapped up into the debt ceiling, and then they'll be wrapped up into the fiscal end of the year budget. So there's going to be a lot of battles waging, and businesses are still struggling. There's still no funding that's out there, and we're all closing at an alarming rate. So as usual, the rhetoric in the middle, and we're sitting here kind of left out. So I do think that gyms are going to have to take a hard look and figure out kind of what they want to do, especially because funding may not come until sometime spring, maybe summer. Who knows? It may not pass at all. We may get no funding. So remember, restaurants are tied into us, but it doesn't seem like there's an overwhelming support for the restaurants either getting any more money. it doesn't seem like there's any overwhelming support, period, to give any more economic relief that is related to COVID. This is from speaking to several people, including our conversations that we had last week inside New York State. So it's definitely stacked against us. We're definitely trying to push forward, but again, we're undermanned and underfunded. So it is important if you're part of the boutique fitness industry and you want to support us to do so. We are doing our best, trying to make those connections, trying to have those phone calls, trying to be a part of anything that's written or be a part of any verbiage or rephrasing of something that makes sure that the small businesses come first, that the small business owner is taken care of first, that whatever that free money is, whatever that grant money is, that goes to us first and foremost. So that is priority number one, and how we do that. But it is important to remember that not everybody's going to be made whole, and it's important to remember what we're up against. So that's what we know from the Small Business Committee. Joseph and I are trying to have a meeting up in Albany with the economic advisors to try to see if we can start to get involved in some of the fiscal budget planning for next year, because that's when Albany will decide on certain funding, and that's usually done in the first to second quarter of the year. So we're trying to get involved in that now, so that perhaps there's something that we can do for gyms here in New York. We're trying to have the same conversations in Jersey, and we will be going out to California sometime in the next 3 to 4 months to have some meetings out there. So we are pushing forward. We are trying our hardest. All of our members will also receive an email later today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, with a list of websites and different things where they can go for EIDL or grants or different things that will be available. All right, guys, so I just wanted to give you a quick little update. Keep on pushing, and as always, if there's any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. Thanks, guys.